Hello and welcome to another tutorial in the CSS series. So far, we have looked at different ways of writing CSS selectors by targeting HTML elements and adding specific styles to those elements. And we have been writing our CSS completely in a style element. Although this is a valid way to write CSS in an HTML page, this is certainly not the best practice. If you look at this HTML page, we have our CSS and HTML written within the same file. And this actually looks a lot longer here. And there is very less amount of HTML when we compare it with the number of lines that we have for CSS styles. So as the file extension says, it's a .html file. It definitely makes sense to have only HTML within this page and to separate out the CSS to another file. So the way we can do that is by using an element called as link element. So link element starts with a link tag and it has certain required attributes called as rel. Rel describes the relationship between the HTML file and the file that we are trying to link. So the file that we are trying to link is a style sheet, and it also takes another required attribute called as href, and this could be a self-closing element. So href here takes the path of our CSS file. So let me add style.css. Although we could add a style.css file, we don't have it yet within our repository. So let me create a style.css file. So VS Code has recognized the .css extension and it gave it a new icon. So all of our CSS can go within this file and our web page can continue to work. So let me copy over everything that we have here and move it to this external style sheet. We call this as an external style sheet because it's linked um, within the link tag and it's out of this HTML file. So that's why it's external. So the next thing I would like to do is save, and let's verify if this continues to work. Let me go back to the web page and hit refresh. So it does continue to work. Now let's look at another way of writing CSS. So this is one way. We looked at the method of writing CSS using a style tag, and this is another method where we are adding an external style sheet. And the third way of writing or adding styles is by directly putting in an attribute called style and giving it a specific style. In our case, we just gave it a color of magenta to this span element. So let me go back and hit refresh. As you can see, this color magenta has been applied to the span element. So one thing to note here is there is an order in which CSS styles are applied. So this is called as CSS precedence. So the highest precedence of a CSS style is applied when the style is applied directly on the element like this using an attribute. So this has the highest precedence, sorry, and then whatever styling that we write within the link tag here will be overwritten if it finds an attribute, a style attribute within the HTML element. To make sure that that is the case, let's go back to our element and add span in the color of, let's say, aqua. Let me save this and go back. and hit refresh. So the color is still magenta. Uh, just to make sure that it is overriding, let me remove the color style for inline style for some time and then go back. So the original color that this span has is coming from our style sheet here on line 21. And if I go back and add an inline style, this is called as an inline style because I'm directly adding a style using a style attribute. So that's when it gets overwritten. So this is the precedence of the style that is being applied. So that takes a higher precedence. So these are the three different ways of writing or linking CSS. So the first one is by adding a style element within the head. The second way is to add everything in a CSS file and link it as an external style sheet. And the third way is to write CSS directly within a style attribute. So as you can see, writing CSS using these style attributes is definitely not a scalable approach because it's really difficult to go to each of these elements and then add certain styles to those elements. And the worst part is when we want to style multiple HTML elements in one shot, we'll have to go through each and every element and add this style attribute. So which definitely is not scalable. So out of these three methods that we talked about, adding CSS using an external style sheet is the best practice that is recommended. So now that we have established how to write CSS and what are the best practices of writing or of linking a CSS to an HTML element or a HTML web page, um, we'll be talking about different CSS properties in the coming tutorial. So I'll see you in the next tutorial.